Hi, I'm Emily Gantert with the Georgia Center for Nonprofits, and we are just really excited to bring you another program from our partners at Mutual of America. Today, we have Andrew and Nicole with us. They are our retirement experts here to share their wealth of knowledge and insight with all of us here today. So welcome, and turn it over to Andrew. Hello.
All right. Hello, Emily. Thank you. And thank everyone for joining this morning. I'm glad you all could be here. This is one of the things that we really enjoy doing is educating and giving knowledge and information to the members of the Georgia Center for Nonprofit. This is the fun part for us. So I appreciate you all being here this morning. Hopefully you'll pull one or two nuggets away and or just something will be sparked by something we say, and give you the opportunity to say, hey, that's something that I was thinking of, or hey, maybe that's something I need to look into. And so, yeah, we're just happy to have you. And today we're going to talk a little bit about understanding retirement plan options. And I guess I'd also be remiss if I didn't say we appreciate the Georgia Center for Nonprofits for the partnership, and it's been built up a lot over the past, I would say, year and a half. We've been a lot more active with presenting and just having dialogue with them. So again, just happy to be here this morning. So our understanding retirement plan options, as I'm sure you're aware, there are a ton of different things that go into providing a plan for your organization. So we're going to take a look at just a few things. We're going to dig into some, others we're going to just touch on. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure you have the information and feel comfortable enough to come back and reach out to us. The biggest thing is we're a resource for you all as members of the Georgia Center for Nonprofits. So just to start, our team. So as you can see, myself and Nicole, we're group account representatives. Blake Mehard is going to be on the next slide. He's also a group account representative. And really our role is that of the quarterback amongst our team. We work with leadership, the executive team of the organization to really take a look at the plan from a consulting level, help you to design the plan, making sure you are following legislature and compliance, making sure the plan, most importantly, the documents themselves and the plan itself is fitting goals of the organization to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish for yourselves and your employees. John Cotty is the regional vice president. So he handles, he's over Atlanta as well as New Orleans. We have about 40 offices across the country. John is, again, New Orleans and Atlanta. Here in Georgia, or here in Atlanta, we cover Georgia and South Carolina. And so John is really, if you will, the expert of experts when it comes to the intricacies of the plans. And he stays involved from beginning to end. So he's obviously a great resource for us to have. You have Blake, who I mentioned, also serves the same role as Nicole and myself. And essentially, we just cover different territories across Georgia and South Carolina. And then you have David Arnold, and he is a participant account rep. He and Brian Wolfon isn't pictured, but they are really responsible for driving the employee education, making sure your employees are tracking well for retirement, making sure they understand the options they have within the plan, and really, simply put, to empower them, making them feel comfortable so that they have a handle and a good handle on their retirement situation. So a little bit about Mutual of America. We were founded in 1945. We're a mutual company. The important part about that is we're there solely for the benefit of our contract holders and policy holders. We don't have stockholders. We don't have share prices to worry about. And so therefore, we don't have that influence of leaning and moving in ways that affect share price and market status. We're truly there for our clients to make sure that they're on the right track. And a lot of times our missions and our goals are aligned with you all. So with that being said, we were actually founded as a nonprofit in 1945, founded to help other nonprofits. And even 75 years plus later, we are still almost solely focused on nonprofits. We have about 90% of our clients that are nonprofit organizations across the country. And out of that 90%, these numbers are slightly dated, but we have about 7,500 plans across the country. Within those plans, we have roughly 400,000 plan participants from organizations. And another part I always like to add is we have right around a 98% retention rate. Industry standard is right around 89, 90. So that 98%, we take pride in that. Once people are aware of Mutual of America, what we do, how we work with organizations, and really just our values and missions of the company, they don't leave, they stay around. And so obviously that's something we're very proud of. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about several things. Like I said, we'll dive into some a little more than others, but we're going to talk a little bit about retirement plan considerations, types of retirement plans, and plan services available for nonprofit organizations specifically. Understanding your service provider. Are they a bundled provider? Are they unbundled provider, which we'll talk a little bit about. Understanding fees and how that affects, the plan. A little about investment services. Participant communication, that's the education piece of it, as well as some best practices for you all to consider as plan sponsors and leadership. So, retirement plan considerations. Things to ask yourself or be aware of whenever you're looking at providing a plan or looking over a plan you currently have. Your mission and philosophy regarding employee benefits and retirement planning. Just to touch on that, what we see often and a lot in the nonprofit space, you have plans that have been around with organizations for, decades, 30 years, 20 years. And because the turnover is somewhat high in the nonprofit world, whether it's leadership moving from one place to the other, the model of your organization changing, your mission and your values and your goals staying the same, but just the model changing as you grow and you progress. Understanding why and what you want to get out of your retirement and employee benefits is very important. You want to make sure that what you're currently doing is in line with your current goals and not goals of the organization 20 years ago. Number of employees. That's important for a lot of different reasons. The biggest one is once you get to a certain amount of participants in your plan, it causes for you to have to file an annual report that's audited, so a little different. So again, number of employees is always important. Your budget, that's pretty self-explanatory. Making sure what you're doing and what you're providing is not only helping your employees and your organization, but also within your budget as well. What's in place now? I touched on that a little bit. What are you currently doing? And is that something that is set up to make the organization as beneficial and as efficient as possible moving forward? Plan design goes right in line with that, making sure that your plan is designed to maximize the things that you want to do as an organization or as a plan sponsor. And then commitment to employee education. This is one, unfortunately, in the nonprofit space that gets overlooked often, whether it's the stigma of nonprofit employees not making a lot of money, or the fact of, brokers or commission-based consultants not feeling the need to come out and really work with you. That's something that is key, because obviously, I'm sure if I asked every one of you, do you want your employees to understand their retirement plan? Do you want them to feel comfortable with what they're doing? Do you want to empower your employees? I'm sure all of you would, raise your hand with an emphatic yes. And a big part of that is the employee education. So retirement plan considerations and defined types of defined contribution plans. I'm sure you've seen and are familiar with most of these. You have your simple employee pension, often referred to as a SEP. You have your simple IRA. You have your 403B thrift plan, your 401k profit sharing plan, safe harbor 401k and 403B plan, which we'll touch on, as well as the 457 deferred compensation for tax exempt organizations. We're going to focus on the bottom four, as those are the most common to the nonprofit world and the nonprofit space. So we'll dig into each of those a little bit. So your 403B thrift plan. A couple of things, a couple of key points there. Employee and employee contributions are both permitted to that plan. You also have the ability to have Roth contributions. Employer contributions may be matching contribution, matching a percentage of your employees' deferral contribution, or non-elective, or a base as it's referred to. And this is just simply you as in the employer putting in money regardless of what the employee does on their contribution side. A couple of ways to look at your employer contributions. They can be fixed or discretionary. Fixed being you can write into the plan documents that you're going to have X amount of dollars or X percentage of a matching annually. Or for a little more flexibility, you can also write into the plan documents, which a lot of people are unaware of, discretionary match. So based on what the organization looks like from a revenue standpoint at the end of the year, you can then determine what type of match you would like to contribute as the employer. These can also be based on age or service weighted formulas. Whether you want to contribute more as the employer for some of your older, more seasoned employees, or if you want to do a service weighted formula that leans more on the tenure or how long an employee's been with the organization, you have that ability as well. It allows for loans and hardship withdrawals, limited non-discrimination testing. Just to touch on that a little bit, most plans have discrimination testing. It's based on ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And essentially what that does is it looks out for those participating in the plan. And so there's testing involved from a compliance standpoint to essentially make sure that your highly compensated employees, management level employees, the plan isn't geared towards them unfairly. So the 403B has a limited non-discrimination testing. Then, of course, you have your plan documents or SPD summary plan description that all plans have. And then I mentioned a little earlier, the annual return or report or 5500. If we have anyone out there who handles the HR, the reporting side, I'm sure you're very aware of the Form 5500. Next, we have the 401k. 401k, very, very similar to the 403b as far as the contributions, employee and employer contributions, your Roth contributions. They may be, your employer contributions may be matching or non-elective. Same fixed or discretionary flexibility. You have your annual return and report that you still have to file, your 5500. IRS qualification, more specific parameters based on the IRS rules that the 401k has to fit into. And this next bullet kind of alludes to that. So these plans have full non-discrimination testing. Again, making sure the plan is fitting into parameters so that it's not unfairly weighted or leaning towards your management and highly compensated employees. And then, of course, you're always going to have your plan documents, as well as you have the ability to allow loans and hardship withdrawals for your employees. So, safe harbor 403B and 401k plans. Safe harbor simply means your plan is set due to IRS bylaws or restrictions. Your plan is set so that your non-discrimination testing is satisfied based on specific employer matching. Here you have a couple of sample formulas, and we're not going to dig into it too much, but for example, an employer match of 100% or dollar for dollar on the first 3% of the employee deferral, and then 50% on the next 2% of their deferral, or a 3% compensation to all eligible employees. And that 3% would be a base, which I referred to earlier. So essentially what you have is ERISA plans, again, refer to plans in which employers are contributing to the actual plan. So safe harbor is a good way to help avoid and mitigate some of that non-discrimination testing, which can be kind of tough at times. Again, though, hardship withdrawals may be permitted on employee money, and loans are also permitted. One key point that I skipped over there are the vesting. So when you have a safe harbor plan, the contributions that are made by the employer, they are vested immediately. So the employees are vested immediately in employer contribution. Again, with the ERISA law protecting those in the plan, this vesting immediately is just making sure, because of these matching contributions, because the matching contributions limit the non-discrimination testing, it's ERISA or the governing bodies making sure that, hey, once these contributions go into the plan from the employer, the employees are 100% vested in them, because we're allowing them being the plan sponsor, we're allowing them to not have to perform discrimination testing. May have some questions around that. I know that was a mouthful, so I'm more than happy to touch on that, at some point if needed. And then, of course, like all plans, your plan documents, and then your filing of your 5500. So, eligible 457B deferred compensation plan. Certain tax-exempt employers may adopt a Section 457B plan, only available to select group of management or highly compensated employees. So I mentioned highly compensated employees a couple of times. Essentially, a highly compensated employee is anyone in 2020 that made $130,000 or more. They would be considered a highly compensated employee. Some of the non-discrimination testing, what it does is there's a formula that takes the actual deferred percentage along with the actual contribution percentage, and they're essentially gauging averages. And for example, if your organization has an average from an employee level, a non-highly compensated employee level, say that the average contribution to the plan is 4%. What the rule says is that you, as the employer or a highly compensated employee, cannot contribute more than 2% above the average contributions throughout the plan. So for example, the average contributions in the plan are 4%. You, as an executive director, CFO leadership, if you will, you want to contribute 10%. Well, that would be out of line when relative to the actual parameters. So you would only actually be able to contribute 6% of your earnings or your salary to the plan based on the fact that the rest of your employees only averaged 4% contribution. I went through that to say what the 457 does is it allows leadership, highly compensated employees, to contribute to a separate plan, okay? It then adds another 19.5, which is the 2021 max contribution to your 401k, 403b plan. it allots for another $19,500, giving you a total of $39,000 you can contribute annually. Obviously, being a highly compensated employee, having higher earnings, it just gives you room to put away more for retirement, if that makes sense. So the last thing there, eligible plan participants may contribute to the 457B, in addition, as I mentioned, to other qualified plans by the employer. All right, and I'll take a second. Emily, are we good? Is there anything pressing in the questions there, or?
From no, I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
So if anybody has questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or I think with the size group we have, if anyone just wants to unmute and ask a question when we get to these open Q&A points, please feel free to do so. Either way will work.
Okay, perfect. All right, so understanding your service provider. This is extremely important, especially for nonprofit organizations and organizations that may be overlooked. First, does the service provider, what's their niche? Do they understand the nonprofit world? Do they work with nonprofits regularly? Do they understand that nonprofits may have seasonal employees that may put them over the 100 count threshold for your annual filing? Do you have contract employees that may not be core employees, and how that affects the plan and your plan testing? Bundled or unbundled. So a bundled, which we'll touch on here in a second, is kind of a one-stop service provider. Your unbundled or multiple service providers is one that which most of you are probably familiar with. This is typically what we see. They have a broker, they have attorneys that they have to lean on. They have a third-party administrator or a TPA, and then they have an investment company. A lot of moving parts, a lot of hands in the cookie jar, if you will. And the more moving parts, the more hands in the cookie jar, oftentimes means higher fees, more of a headache to have the plan administered. And sorry, I thought I saw someone raise a hand out of the corner of my eye down there. Okay, so your bundled or one-stop service provider. This is actually the type of provider that we are at Mutual of America. So one-stop, full service provider, or direct, meaning we market our plans solely to the plan sponsors and the organization. We handle selection of investment alternatives, which are coordinated and monitored, subject to the plan fiduciary's oversight. Nicole is going to speak to some of the fiduciary things here a little bit later. And the other key, based on some of the things I mentioned, the advantage with the one-stop or your bundled provider is to the small and medium-sized organizations, which key point, plan management and resources are limited. So just in my experience with nonprofits, most of you all do not have a wing of office space where you have a human resources team to handle day-to-day responsibilities of providing or administering the plan. Usually it's just one or two people, or one person most of the time, who is doing everything from 5,500, answering employee questions, doing the contributions and remittances, payroll, et cetera, et cetera. You get the picture. This is where the bundle provider is extremely effective, because essentially we, and I say we as Mutual of America being a bundle provider, we take on all of that legwork and those headaches. Then you have your unbundled or multiple service providers. Again, this is something that we see common, and plan administration is handled internally or by a third-party administrator, and investment services are handled by independent investment firms. Your TPA or third-party administrator may offer a basic services package for a fee, and charge additional fees for all other services requested. That's key because they'll give you something up front, but 6, 7 months down the road, you find out that, hey, I need this added to make it more efficient or operationally helpful for my organization. Well, then a lot of times they'll come back around with, we can provide that for you. However, you're going to have to pay this fee to get that resource. Investment services may be provided by banks, mutual funds, insurance companies, or brokerage firms. Additional oversight may be required to coordinate and monitor services provided by the 2 or more companies. Again, when you have multiple people involved in helping you provide the plan, now you have to coordinate. You know, your auditor may need to reach out to the TPA. Your TPA is coming to you to ask you questions as the HR person within the organization to get answers that you now have to go back through files and look up or pull from memory. It can be a daunting task. Advantage to large employers with expert internal plan management resources. Again, just based on my experience, the opposite of nonprofit organizations that I've dealt with and worked with. So just a couple of things, again, to kind of get you thinking about the intricacies and how much goes into really just the front end of providing the plan. And so with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Nicole Price, and she will start with understanding fees.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Emily, for always pulling this together for us. So we're going to go through understanding fees, and basically it's just a bit of a deeper dive into what Andrew already gave you the broader overview. So understanding fees. I will lead with saying that I refer to an employer's plan as a living document, much as you would a revocable or irrevocable trust, you know, mostly revocable because you can still change it. It must be looked at. It's not a one and done. And as Andrew mentioned, as management changes, as new folks come on, as your mission may change in terms of growth and employment, we need to make sure that we go back and revisit the provisions and certainly understand and have a reference to what is in place and what needs to be updated based on certain legislative changes as we've seen in the past year. So to start, the employer fee disclosure is something that if you have a plan already, you should certainly locate and make sure that you have as reference. This is going to explain to the employer sponsor what the investment fees are, what is responsible from payment from the employer versus the participant, and what is entitled, so to speak. And then we're going to get into just a little bit on the fiduciary side, and we can go from there. So it usually is something that comes with the initiation of a plan once the plan is done, but it is something that you should receive. If you haven't received it, you should. You should get it every year, and certainly at least 90 days after a startup plan. The important notice is if there are any changes to the plan, then you should get a notice on that to add to those reference documents and make sure that they're in a safe and important place so that anyone can access them who's on the leadership team or has access from an administrative standpoint. And I would say this too. So for us at Mutual of America, we have a prototype plan, and therefore it makes it much easier for employer sponsors to adapt to any legislative changes, which we had many in 2020. A lot of the parameters, if you will, were relaxed. And so because of that, you didn't have to sign additional documents or amend your plan in any way because we were already approved by the IRS. So important notices will go out. You just need to make sure that that is communicated. to the participants. Moving on, administrative fees may include
Sorry.
Love Andrew. Administrative fees will include your contract fees. If there are fees for your contract to actually have it, and then the plan startup or conversion fees. Startup, meaning you never had a plan before and you're starting one up, meaning we're actually designing your provisional documents in terms of the match, the vesting, all the things that Andrew went over earlier, and or conversion fees. And that means should you decide to change providers from where you are now to another provider. Wrap fees means simply, is it bundled? Okay. Distribution fees, should you leave the plan? Are there fees associated with that? Miscellaneous fees, plan amendments. If you make a change to the plan, does that cost you? These are things that you reference that are in quote unquote small print. But again, as GNC members, and you're here today, Mutual of America, you don't have a problem with this. But this, again, you may have not always been members, and this is something to look for in your documents. Restatement of documents. You don't necessarily need to do that because I just talked to you all about having a prototype, which is what we do. The 55 audit support, that's very important. Are you, even though Mutual America, we are all local, we have a bundled approach, we prepare all these documents for you. We have our service team on site and we are collecting these documents before filing. But at the end of the day, we send them to you because you have to file them. We are not authorized to file. So that's something. Some of you who have, as Andrew went over, the third-party administrators, they can file that for you. We do not, we prepare everything and then you file. Change an investment menu, okay? If you add some investment documents or options rather, that's good. And then you need to make sure that that is communicated so that people understand, the participants understand they have choices. And then forfeiture. Okay, that is, there could be a charge for that. And that's basically if someone retires, leaves, resigns, terminated for whatever reason, is there a cost associated with that? And what must be paid by plan assets and what is charged to the participant? So moving on. The participant fee disclosure, that goes out automatically and that is legislated. And again, we touched on safe harbor plans. You know, there are certain, and that's up to your provider in terms of when disclosures come out. Some come out annually, some come out 90 days from when you sign out or when you sign in. It depends. But it's very, very important to understand that participants are absolutely informed at all times, and your provider should make sure that that is available. Also, the provider you have also provides a sheet that you can post in the copy room, the lunch room, what have you, so that they can check it out and see what's available, so that they can know where to log in or who to contact for additional information. Participant fees may include, it depends on your provider and who's providing it, your investment expenses. And when I say that, let's go into these fees. Separate account fees means it basically, you have a menu of investment options as a plan provider and a participant. And so you can go in and you have a separate account. And that means you could have different mutual funds and they're going to meet 6 separate account measures or asset classes. And that's going to be large cap, small cap, a balanced fund, total return fund, and then you will have separate account fees. So everyone has the choice once they sign up for your plan to go in, look at this menu and decide what they want to invest, how they want to allocate that percentage that they're allocating and that you hopefully are matching to a degree. And then they get to choose how that's invested. There may be fees associated with the expense ratios of those selected accounts. So it will not be the same for every single participant, because I may not invest as a participant the same way the guy next door may. So at the end of the day, you got to look at the separate account fees. Management fees, those are fees that if you have a third party outside advisor offering, you need to check those out, because those are fees as well. Fees by fund share class. Most retirement plans have what we call institutional shares. And so it's going to be a lower, first of all, these are tax deferred vehicles. And so they should be a lot lower than if you were just investing in your traditional taxable account. So funds by share class, there's A class, B class, C class, and I shares, which are institutional. You will mostly see that, and you'll see R shares, which are retirement. They're very nominal. So that's something just to understand what they are when you see them. 12B1 fees are the fees associated with whatever menu you have of funds available to the plan. And those are for the plan's marketing disclosures, annual disclosures they are held to distribute to you all. Surrender fees. Should you get out of a annuity contract plan, if you're in a guaranteed annuity provider plan, or if you have individual net asset value plans, surrender fees, you got to look at if there are anything, if there's anything that will be charged to you if you choose to make a change. Most times, if you're choosing within the same fund family, there aren't any, but you should check. And that should be disclosed to you. And if you look back onto your fee disclosure letter, you will see that. Contingent deferred sales charge, that is CDSC, that is on the back end. Should you check anything out and say, I want to move out of this, you need to know what share class you're in, because you could be penalized for moving out of that fund into another. But most likely that does not happen with 401ks and 403bs, but never say never. Loan fees. Individuals can have loans, which I am a big believer in. If it's available to you under your plan, take advantage of it versus a bank, simply because you're paying yourself back and you don't have to go through pulling out 2 and 3 years of tax returns and waiting on the bank to let you know what's up. And then in the meantime, your investments are still growing for you. So, but however, there could be fees associated with establishing the loan or maybe even a penalty for paying it off early. You just have to check, because each plan can be certainly designed differently. And then distribution fees. If you take anything out, again, there could be some fees there. Moving on. Investment services. So the number of funds when you choose to establish a plan, you will have multiple menus, if you will. Do you want to have open architecture where you have multiple fund families, your Fidelities, your American funds, your Vanguards of different asset classes? The typical plan to be, quote unquote, a responsible fiduciary has 6 asset classes. And so you literally can pick a number of funds. Or do you give the whole farm in terms of options? Well, I think that makes it more complicated for groups of people, because it definitely needs to be explained. There is a learning curve here. Some are very, very familiar with it. Some are on the learning curve. But that's why we're here, and other providers, in terms of education. But think of administration. But we definitely also have target funds, target date funds, which is a bundled approach. It's definitely not a one and done. And it is definitely one of those things where it is a very, very responsible way to project when you may retire. It's updated annually in terms of weighting and asset classes, and it's rebalanced. So that is very comforting that someone is taking watch, and you can project when you will retire, and it manages your risk level. Fund managers, one or many. This again, do you want multiple fund managers or do you want target date funds? This is up to the employer sponsored design. Asset allocation, where's the money? If the money is sitting, when you look at it, and this is where we encourage you all to, during plan review, take a look, or have your provider, current provider, take a look at how the company participants are doing. It won't disclose where they're invested. It's not invading anyone's privacy, but it will give you a weighting of, are they highly, as a group, invested in money market or target date funds, or are they well diversified and managed? So that'll give you a good indication. And so that's where we encourage target date funds, because we know that is a responsible way to measure risk and make sure that money is working for those who put the money away for the comfortability of retirement or future need. And the last point here, and I do want to touch on this, is does the investment manager offer to indemnify the employer? That's hold harmless. Indemnify simply means make whole. And that's something I want to touch on. We need to understand from a fiduciary standpoint, you all as employer sponsors are fiduciaries, and you do need to understand that. However, it does empower you to look at assign an outside provider or a third-party advisor. And we at Mutual of America, we have several layers of indemnification in terms of protecting you all from liability, which covers any wrongdoing or anything that would come your way in a negative way, court costs in the nature of investment and money. And you just want to protect yourselves. And so you definitely need to, as a fiduciary, understand that it can be assigned, and that will relieve you of some of that oversight. Although you just need to be very particular in how you do that and take a deep dive into the people. Participant communications. So, employee education, is it effective? Yes, it is. I think we all want to educate our employees and make sure that everyone is learning on the appropriate curve. That's what we do. We have dedicated participant account representatives who do that. And we do it in person, we do it virtually, whatever, one-on-one. Who does it? David Arnold was mentioned earlier. We have a new team member, Brian Wilford. He actually just joined us probably about 6 months ago, but very, very well seasoned. And that's what we do. We come out, we do lunch and learns, we definitely do enrollments, and we do calls, and we definitely take one-on-ones to make sure you're on the right track. Conflicts of interest, that is something that you kind of need to be careful. A lot of you all have board members, and everyone has a great idea, we understand, but we just want to make sure that we have an objective opinion in terms of a fiduciary responsibility and acting legally in the best interest. Required communication, I mentioned this, notices, SPDs means your summary plan description that comes out annually. If there's any changes, we will issue a new one, or if you have another provider, you certainly should request one, and any plan changes due to an amendment. Modernizing your plan, very important. So this is probably one of the most important slides in this presentation, automatic enrollment. A lot of people in terms of plan sponsorship do not want to make changes or take a look at it because it can be an administrative nightmare. Automatic enrollment eases all of that in terms of coordinating payroll integration with your payroll provider, such that the administrators in your office or organization literally oversee, and they enter the new employees, the ones who exit, that's noted, and they simply go in and they approve what the service department and the payroll coordinator sees. Auto escalation, that means when they come in, they're automatically enrolled and they have an option to opt out within a certain period of time, and they will default to a very conservative investment option should they not make a move. We, of course, as most providers would, notify that person to get them to enroll. If not, they will automatically escalate. And what that means is through the next year, it may bump up to your matching contribution that you've dedicated to the plan. But we would be in contact with them to where they would actually opt into the plan and not be defaulted. So auto escalation is something to be aware of. Review your QDIA. That is your qualified option in terms of an investment. So when you go into a plan, if the employee goes in and does not elect to go in, they will default into a QDIA. And what that is simply is the account that basically is very, very safe, basically the equivalent of a money market. And that is where they will stay. Okay, so basically money market. So just make sure that you make the right choices there. Most plans have multiple options, as we do. Review eligibility. If you are seasonal, if you have part-time employees, if you have long-time employees, it depends on everyone's individual structure. Just let that be known, because it certainly can be defined and designed around what your objective is and what your organization operates in terms of your budget, how funds are received, if you're fundraising, if you have grants, whatever that looks like to you all when your board meets, and when your fundraising season begins and ends. These are things to be considered. Review your entry date. Some plans are basically, a lot of people roll them out thinking it's the beginning of the year. It certainly looks at the calendar year and a fiscal year, depending on what your organization does. But believe you me, only certain plans require you to start and certain times, and you don't have to all the time. So it's a year-round startup, depending on the type of plan that you look to design for yourself. Best practices, very quickly. I know we're wrapping up here. Leverage your vendors, okay? So I touched on this earlier, which is as fiduciaries, as employer sponsors, you certainly have the authority in working in the best interest of your organization and employees to bring in other people, other providers, your accountants, your outside advisors, and providers. That is basically leverage. We work with them, okay? We are a bundled operation, but if you have the appetite that says, well, we have a close relationship here, we definitely will have to work with your payroll person, but just be conscious of leveraging your vendors, okay? Because you will have to negotiate some pricing there. Develop communication strategy. So when you say the notices must go out, work with your provider, because we can also set up communication so that, one, we can time it. Two, we can set up sessions in terms of communicating. And we just need to make sure that at all times they understand that a provider is available to answer their questions, so that it's not all set on the HR director or anyone in your organization to be called upon. That is what your provider is there for. And then also leverage the review. So we offer a health review financially on your plan. And that's to take a look at what are your demographics of the plan? How are your assets allocated? Who's participating, who's not? Where can we improve? Those are the things that need to be reviewed annually. And certainly when there are change in motion in terms of management. If there's any shift or change or event that causes that, it's a time to take a look at it. And we're certainly open and available to do so for you at any time. Andrew, myself, Blake, we're all right off of the perimeter at the King and Queen building. Call on us anytime or email us.
Please don't hesitate to reach out to Andrew or Nicole or their team over at the Mutual of America office. So thank you again so much, Andrew and Nicole, and to everyone for joining us today.
Right. Thank you. Everybody have a great day.